The clearing was a jagged wound in the jungle, its bamboo stalks freshly cut, and their raw edges jutting from the ground like fractured bones. The humid air was alive with the buzz of insects and the occasional rustle of leaves, the jungle watching with quiet curiosity as the boys trained under its canopy. Fitzroy and Garret stood barefoot in the dirt, their bodies slick with sweat, their breath coming in ragged gasps. They moved in near unison, their limbs mimicking the fluid motions of the two monkeys before them, each strike and block, sharp with intent. The old man watched, his gaunt figure pacing around the boys like a predator stalking its prey. His staff thudded against the ground with each deliberate step, the golden rings atop it chiming faintly in the wind. Every so often, he barked a sharp grunt or hiss, his voice cutting through the jungle's natural symphony. The boys adjusted their stances as he passed, bending their knees lower, tightening their fists. The old man was relentless, his presence both commanding and inscrutable. One monkey swung through the trees surrounding the clearing, its movements quick and chaotic, the occasional snap of branches punctuating its journey. It threw small pebbles at the boys, the projectiles harmless but disruptive, tempting to break their concentration. Fitzroy flinched as a pebble struck his shoulder, his form wavering for a moment before he corrected it. Garret glanced at him, the faintest smirk tugging at his lips despite the strain. The lesson continued until the boys could no longer stand, their legs trembling beneath them as they sank to the ground. The old man stepped forward, his shadow falling over them like a shroud. He poured water from his gourd into shallow wooden bowls, the liquid spilling in uneven streams from his shaky hands. One monkey's carrying the bowls, moving deftly to ensure the water reached them, despite the old man's unsteady grip. Its fur glistened with droplets, evidence of its dedication. The boys drank deeply, the water cool and refreshing. Fitzroy watched the old man as he stood motionless, his pale eyes fixed on the horizon, as though seeing something far beyond the jungle's edge. There was a quiet reverence in the moment, a shared understanding between students and master that needed no words. The flickering candlelight bathed the small tent in a warm, golden glow, its flame dancing with the slightest breath of air. The boy and I sat cross-legged on the ground. The tent was sparse, its walls thin and its contents meager, but the books were treasures, repositories of ancient wisdom in a place where survival often felt more visceral than intellectual. Fitzroy turned a page, his fingers brushing against the worn paper, his brows furrowed as he read, the words pulling him into their rhythm. Garret sat across from him, his own book resting in his lap, his eyes heavy with both exhaustion and curiosity. The silence between them was companionable, punctuated only by the soft crackle of the candle and the distant hum of the jungle. Sahale spoke blaspheme at the pit. She expected man to be an animal, for instincts to replace thought. What service did this have? Fitzroy's gaze lingered on the text before him, the words taking root in his mind. He turned the page, the creased spine of the book whispering its protest. His breath hitched as he read on, his expression shifting from confusion to realization. The candlelight caught the edge of his features, highlighting the faint sheen of sweat on his brow. But through the words of Aristotle, I perhaps saw her meaning. He understood that man was the noblest of all God's creatures, but at any moment could become the most primitive. Garret looked up, his curiosity piqued by Fitzroy's reaction. But before he could speak, the night was broken by the sound of a distant scream. It was faint, carried on the wind, but unmistakable. A girl's voice, high and filled with terror, cut through the stillness like a blade. The boys exchanged a glance, their unspoken fears mirrored in each other's eyes. Treasure, the prize of flesh. Rewards for the winners of the pit. A pit where men were turned from noble creatures into beasts. The scream faded into silence, leaving only the jungle's nocturnal symphony in its wake. Fitzroy felt a chill run through him, his mind replaying the scenes from the pit, the violence, the blood, the cheers. Garret shifted, his eyes darkening as he stared at the tent's opening. The old man appeared without a sound, his silhouette filling the space as he gestured with a sharp, deliberate motion. His hand drew across his throat, a universal signal that needed no translation. Fitzroy extinguished the candle with a single breath, plunging the tent into darkness. They sat in the quiet, their breaths shallow, their thoughts heavy. The world beyond the tent seemed to close in around them, vast and unknowable, a beast waiting to pounce. The pale morning light seeped into the tent, weak and tentative, as though unsure it belonged in a place so far removed from the civilized world. Fitzroy stirred, the grip of sleep reluctant to release him. But before the heavy drowsiness could fade, he felt the sharp pinch of tiny fingers clamping his nose shut. He gasped, jolting awake, his eyes snapping open to find the mischievous faces of the monkeys staring back at him. Their dark eyes gleamed, reflecting both intelligence and mischief, and their quick, nimble hands went to work tickling his bare feet with blades of grass. Beside him, Garret was met with a similar awakening. One monkey peeled his eyelids open, its small fingers startlingly deft as Garret groaned in protest. Another tugged at his ear, chittering softly as though coaxing him back to life. The boy's attempts to swat them away were futile. The monkeys were quicker, darting out of reach only to return a moment later with renewed vigor. Fitzroy sat up, his hair disheveled and his breath uneven. Garret followed, muttering his displeasure as he rubbed his eyes. The monkeys scampered out of the tent, their laughter-like calls trailing behind them, as if mocking the boy's sluggishness. Fitzroy glanced at Garret, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth despite his irritation. The village was just beginning to stir, the heat of the day creeping in with the sun's slow ascent. Fitzroy and Garret sat cross-legged near the central fire, their bowls of simple stew cradled in their hands. The food was unremarkable, but it provided warmth and sustenance, and the boys ate without complaint. Around them, the pirates moved in lazy arcs, stretching and yawning, their movements unhurried but deliberate. The old man appeared, his staff clinking softly against the ground with each step. The golden rings atop it chimed faintly in the breeze, a sound that Fitzroy had come to associate with orders rather than comfort. He gestured sharply, his hand quick and commanding, and the boys rose to their feet, their unfinished bowls left behind without a second thought. Before them lay 2 packs, bulky and worn, their contents shifting slightly as the boys lifted them. Fitzroy adjusted the straps, wincing under the sudden weight. Rocks, heavy and irregular, filled the packs. Garret did the same, his expression tight as he shifted to balance the load. The old man gestured again, his movements precise, and set off toward the jungle without a word. The boys followed. Fitzroy glanced at Garret, their shared exhaustion mirrored in each other's eyes. But there was no room for complaint, no place for weakness. The jungle loomed ahead, dense and shadowed, and beyond it, the mountain rose against the horizon like a jagged scar. Fitzroy swallowed hard, his muscles protesting the weight of the pack, and stepped forward. The jungle was different in the morning, its light softer but no less watchful. The trees seemed to whisper as the group passed, their branches shifting in the breeze. The old man moved swiftly, his staff tapping a steady rhythm that guided the boys as much as his gestures. The old man always was accompanied by monkeys. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but there was always the 3. The little monkeys darted around the group quickly and chaotic, their movements a blur of fur and mischief. Every so often, one would swing low, tugging Fitzroy's arm or throwing a pebble toward Garret, their antics disruptive but strangely deliberate. In the jungle, every step is a test, every breath is earned, and in the shadow of the mountain, I learned what it meant to endure. The packs dug into the boys' shoulders, their weight growing heavier with each passing minute. Fitzroy focused on the sound of his own breath, steady and deep as he pushed forward. Garret kept pace beside him, his jaw set in determination. The old man glanced back occasionally, his pale eyes flickering with something inscrutable, as though measuring the boy's resolve. The jungle path twisted and turned, the group moving deeper into its embrace. Fitzroy felt the sweat pooling at the base of his neck, his body aching with the strain. But he didn't stop. He couldn't. Somewhere ahead, the mountain waited, and with it, the next step in their journey. whatever that might be. The jungle path twisted upward, snaking along the mountain's edge with a cruel, unrelenting incline. Fitzroy and Garret trudged behind the old man, their shoulders bowed under the weight of their loaded rucksacks, filled with smooth river stones that dragged at their muscles with every step. The silence stretched on, heavy and oppressive, broken only by the occasional grunt from Garret or Fitzroy's muffled curse at his own aching feet. Even the monkeys seemed to mock them, darting playfully through the trees, their swift movements a sharp contrast to the boys' labored pace. Silence. Always there were long hours of silence. Silence broken by occasional cursing at our rucks, filled with the smooth river stone. The old man remained far ahead, his steps steady despite his frail appearance. Yet even he wasn't impervious to the jungle's treachery. Rocks shifted beneath his feet, and the monkeys, ever watchful, leapt forward to grab his shirt tails, keeping him from tumbling face first into the dirt. Fitzroy watched the scene unfold, his mouth tightening as he wiped sweat from his brow. Garret stepped alongside him, his breath coming in short gasps. Buddha once declared that the foot can feel its existence when it touches the earth. Fitzroy slipped, the loose rock beneath him sliding treacherously. Garret's sudden grasp steadied him, pulling him upright with a firm grip. Fitzroy nodded in quiet thanks, his lips pressing into a thin line as he supported himself. And at times, I suppose my feet understood Buddha even more than my brain. Ahead, the monkeys grabbed the old man's shirt tails once more, their small bodies straining to keep him from tumbling over the cliff's edge. Fitzroy's eyes lingered on them for a moment, their instinctive care for the old man adding an odd, comical humanity to their otherwise disruptive nature. The group reached the rope bridge, its weathered cords swaying precariously over the steep ravine below. Fitzroy looked down, the jagged rocks far below glinting ominously in the sunlight. Garret placed a hand on his shoulder, urging him forward as the old man crossed first, his staff tapping with rhythmic certainty. The boys followed one by one, each carrying a monkey perched on their shoulders. Fitzroy felt the weight of the monkey's tiny hands gripping him, its presence oddly grounding as the boards beneath his feet creaked with each step. Garret was ahead, his movements slow but steady, the monkey clinging to him as though sensing his fear. Fitzroy kept his gaze forward, his breath even, ignoring the pull of the abyss below. They reached the other side, the relief palpable, and paused to look at the mountain's summit. A rainbow arced from its peak, vibrant against a blue sky, a sky without a cloud and no rain to beacon it. Garret nudged Fitzroy, pointing at the brilliant cascade of colors. Fitzroy's lips curved faintly, a fleeting moment of wonder breaking through the harshness of their climb. And soon, they arrived at the mountain's crest, where a pool of water shimmered like liquid glass. The rainbow danced across its surface, painting the clear liquid with iridescent hues that swirled like oil. Fitzroy stared, his breath catching as the beauty of the scene pressed against him. Garret stood beside him, silent, his gaze fixed on the mesmerizing colors. There was something different, a nature about this island all its own. The monkeys played near the pool, their chatter breaking the stillness as they darted between the trees. The old man stepped forward, his presence calm but commanding. He reached into his oversized shirt sleeve and produced two small bowls, the gesture almost magical in its simplicity. Fitzroy and Garret accepted the bowls, drinking deeply from the mountain water. It was cold and crisp, the taste clean and revitalizing. Fitzroy closed his eyes, the fatigue of their journey momentarily forgotten. The old man knelt near the pool, his movements deliberate, and found a patch of sandy soil. With a twig grasped in a shaky hand, he scratched a single word into the dirt. Fitzroy and Garret watched as he beckoned them over, his face stern and serious. The boys stepped closer, their eyes peering down at the etching in the earth. The word, remember, stared back at them, uneven but unmistakable, scratched in English. There were secrets it held, secrets being kept from us. The old man pointed at the pool of water, his expression grave. The monkeys mimicked him, their tiny hands raised in silent unison. Fitzroy exchanged a glance with Garret, the unspoken tension between them thickening as they turned back to the shimmering pool. The rainbow above them gleamed brightly, a quiet promise of something hidden, something waiting to be discovered. And we were slowly being given the eyes to see them. The mountain air seemed to hold its breath, the moments stretching out as the boys stood frozen in the weight of their task. Whatever secrets lay within the pool, they knew one thing for certain: it would change them. The descent began in silence, the kind that spoke more than words ever could. The mountain's shadow stretched long and jagged across the jungle below, its edges blurring as the sun dipped lower, spilling its dying light over the horizon. Fitzroy's legs ached with every step, his muscles raw from the climb, but no longer bound by the packs of stone brought a strange sense of freedom, if only for a moment. Behind him, Garret trailed with a quiet determination, his breath steady, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. The old man moved with an unnatural swiftness, his wiry frame disappearing around bends in the path, always just far enough ahead to be unreachable. Yet his presence loomed, a guiding shadow whose every step dictated theirs. The monkeys darted between them, their movements chaotic as always, as if their games were part of some unseen choreography. And then the old man stopped. He stood still, his back curved slightly as he peered at the ground, the golden rings atop his staff glinting faintly in the fading light. Fitzroy exchanged a glance with Garret, both boys hesitant but curious as the old man knelt by a mound of earth. His hands, bony and deliberate, dug into the soil with an efficiency that suggested long familiarity. When he straightened, his prize was clutched firmly in one hand. A beetle, almost impossibly large, its shell gleaming like polished obsidian. Fitzroy stared, his breath catching at the sight. The old man tied a long, thin piece of string to one of its legs and, with a motion almost reverent, tossed it into the air. The beetle's wings unfurled with a soft buzz, and in an instant, the trail was illuminated. A radiant golden light pulsed from the beetle's back, constant and otherworldly, bathing the narrow path in a warm glow. Fitzroy's eyes widened as he took it in, the strangeness of the creature somehow fitting in this place of contradictions. They descended deeper into the jungle, the shadows growing thicker, the noises of the night swelling to fill the spaces where daylight had once reigned. Each member of the group guided by their own beetle, the creatures suspended at the ends of strings that vibrated faintly with the hum of their wings. The golden light cut through the darkness, casting long, shifting shadows on the trail. Fitzroy watched the paths twist carefully, each step deliberate, as the terrain grew uneven. The beetle's glow was mesmerizing, but there was something faintly unsettling about it too. Fitzroy couldn't shake the feeling that the creatures were watching them, even as they lit their way. The air was thick with the jungle's scent, a mix of damp earth, decaying leaves, and something faintly sweet, like flowers blooming unseen in the dark. The trail wound on, the mountain's looming presence giving way to the dense embrace of the jungle. With all its otherworldly beauty and mystery, escape was not a consideration, but for one repeated occurrence, an occurrence as assured as the full moon. The thought sat heavy in his mind, unspoken but undeniable. The island had a rhythm all its own, a pattern that defied logic but demanded attention. Fitzroy felt it in every step, every breath, the inescapable pull of something larger than himself. He glanced at Garret, whose jaw was set, his gaze unwavering. Whatever lay ahead, Fitzroy knew they would face it together. The jungle closed in around them, the trees pressing closer, their leaves brushing against the boys' arms and faces like whispers in the dark. The beetles buzzed softly, their light unwavering, as if guiding them towards some unknown destination. Fitzroy tightened his grip on the string, the beetles' weight a strange comfort in the overwhelming vastness of the night. The air grew cooler as they descended, the oppressive heat of the day giving way to a damp chill that seeped into Fitzroy's skin. The monkeys moved quietly now, their earlier playfulness replaced by an eerie stillness. Even the old man seemed subdued, his steps lighter, his movements slower. Fitzroy's heart quickened as the trail leveled out, the jungle ahead opening into a clearing. The lights of the pirate village flickered in the distance, shimmering faintly through the thick curtain of the jungle. Fitzroy and Garret trudged behind the old man, their steps slow and heavy with exhaustion. The jungle's oppressive heat was replaced by the cool breath of night, and the air seemed alive with the sound of chirping insects and the faint rustle of leaves. The glow of the giant beetles illuminated their path, their soft golden light casting long, wavering shadows over the uneven ground. As they emerged from the jungle's embrace, the group passed through a small field teeming with lightning bugs. The insects floated lazily in the air, their luminescent bodies blinking like tiny, erratic stars. Fitzroy slowed, his eyes drawn to the scene. The field seemed otherworldly, a stark contrast to the brutal world that awaited them in the village. Garret glanced at him but said nothing, his own gaze fixed on the beauty of the moment. When the magic of the island faded away, and the brutal nature of the pit revealed men's tragic flaws, the group stopped at the edge of the village. The old man turned, his face obscured by shadow, and released his beetle into the air. The others followed suit, the beetles buzzing softly as they ascended, their light growing fainter with each passing second. Fitzroy watched them go, their glow merging with the lightning bugs, until the darkness of the jungle reclaimed the sky. But as the seasons passed, what once frightened became commonplace. We saw what the darkness held. An ancient philosopher once asked, "Who is more foolish, a child afraid of the dark or a man afraid of light?" The question lingered in Fitzroy's mind as the group moved toward the village, its lights growing brighter, its edges sharper. The shadows deepened around them, but Fitzroy felt no fear. The darkness had become familiar, a companion as much as an enemy. Yet the light held truths he was not yet ready to face. The tent was a sanctuary of sorts, thin and fragile though its walls may have been. Fitzroy and Garret fell heavily onto their cots, their bodies aching, their minds dulled by the climb and descent. The faint scent of damp earth and sweat clung to the air, mingling with the soft flicker of a single candle that lit the canvas walls. Fitzroy stared at the tent's ceiling, his chest rising and falling in slow, deliberate breaths. There is knowledge gained only through action, earned in blood. But the light, the truth, towards it my heart still was hesitant. He turned his head, his gaze falling on the candle. Its flame danced erratically, casting fleeting shadows that seemed almost alive. Fitzroy reached out, his fingers brushing against the worn surface of the bedside table, and pinched the flame between his thumb and forefinger. The darkness rushed in, swallowing the tent whole, and Fitzroy lay back, his eyes open, unblinking. And yet the darkness. I had begun to sense the darkness within me. The thought haunted Fitzroy, begging to be quelled, yearning to be resolved. Fitzroy closed his eyes, and the darkness offered escape. It wrapped around him, heavy and suffocating, its presence a mirror to the turmoil within. He heard Garret shift in his cot, the faint rustle of fabric, a reminder that he wasn't alone. Yet in the darkness, his isolation felt absolute, a chasm that no words or gestures could bridge. And it had begun to comfort him. In the distance, the pirate village buzzed with life. Raucous laughter, drunken shouts, the occasional clatter of metal against wood. The sounds were a reminder of the pit, of the violence that defined their existence here. Fitzroy clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms as the memories surged. The screams, the blood, the cheers. It was a cycle, endless and unrelenting, and Fitzroy was caught in its grip. And yet, the darkness within him stirred not with fear, but with a quiet resolve. Fitzroy didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew one thing for certain. The island was changing him. Whether for better or worse, he could not yet say. All he knew was that the darkness was no longer something to escape. It was creeping into his soul, as inescapable as the island itself.